here on TSN.
World #1 tennis player Novak Djokovic was denied entry into Australia upon landing in Melbourne for the Australian Open, a tournament he won last year. And Djokovic was reportedly held for hours at the city's airport before Australia border forces decided he would have to be deported due to not having the appropriate travel visa after receiving a medical exemption for the COVID-19 vaccine, which the tennis star had approved by Tennis Australia to play in the tournament. The Prime Minister of Australia, Scott Morrison, released this statement. Mr. Djokovic's visa has been cancelled. Rules are rules, especially when it comes to our borders. No one is above these rules. Our strong border policies have been critical to Australia having one of the lowest death rates in the world from COVID. We are continuing to be vigilant. Australian Health Minister Greg Hunt had more on the decision.
I do know that right throughout, as a Commonwealth, as a national government, as an Australian government, the Prime Minister has been clear that Australians have had to do it tough, and Australian in many different states and territories has to show their vaccination record, in some cases to enter premises and cafes and other things, and it's not unreasonable to have exactly the same requirements of all who enter this country. So fair and equitable for all, and the requirements were not able to be met. There was an exemption that had been provided through the Victorian government process. Clearly that did not pass the standards of proof that were required by the Australian Border Force. Yes, it's tough, but it's fair and it's equitable, and it's one rule for all under this Australian government.
Now here's the statement from the Australian Border Force. The Australian Border Force will continue to ensure that those who arrive at our border comply with our laws and entry requirements. The ABF can confirm that Mr. Djokovic failed to provide appropriate evidence to meet the entry requirements to Australia, and his visa has been subsequently cancelled. Non-citizens who do not hold a valid visa or entry, or who have had their visa cancelled, will be detained and removed from Australia. The ABF can confirm Mr. Djokovic had access to his phone. But it was a wild series of events leading up to the decision. After Djokovic was granted a medical exemption from getting vaccinated against COVID-19, allowing him to defend his title at the Australian Open, the world #1 arrived in Melbourne around 11:30 p.m. local time on Wednesday. However, Djokovic's team applied for the wrong visa. The visa he received does not authorize medical exemptions for unvaccinated travelers, meaning he could be denied entry to the country. Upon arrival, Djokovic's team cleared customs, and they were waiting at the airport. One of Djokovic's coaches, Goran Ivanisevic, posted this picture on Instagram, along with the caption, quote, "Not the most usual trip down under." Now, the 20-time Grand Slam champion was reportedly isolated in a room away from his team, getting questioned by Australian Border Force. Djokovic's father had told Australian media, quote, "If they don't let him go in half an hour, we will gather on the street. This is a fight for everyone." Meanwhile, Jalal Pulford, Victoria State's acting minister for sports, took to Twitter saying the federal government will not be providing Djokovic with individual visa application support to participate in the 2022 Australian Open. And visa approvals are a matter for the federal government. Medical exemptions are a matter for doctors. Djokovic's lawyers are in the process of challenging the decision. Reports say there will be an appeal before a judge. With more, here's Jennifer Hedger.
All right, for the latest on Novak Djokovic, we're joined by John Wertheim of Sports Illustrated. And John, it has been quite the back and forth with the 20-time major champion being denied entry into Australia. So can you give us the rundown of exactly what has happened throughout this process?
Oh, man. Yeah, I mean, how far back do we go here? Because I think that's a lot of this. It's context. I mean, for weeks and weeks, this has been a great parlor game in tennis. Will Novak Djokovic go to Australia or not? He's been very coy about this. And so Tuesday, East Coast time in Canada, he has this Instagram post. Not only is he going, but he says he got an exemption. And that got an exemption really got people upset. And while he was in flight, this story gained momentum. Why would this elite athlete have an exemption when so many other Australians haven't had that luxury? Australia's had some very strict protocol during COVID and 93% vaccination in Australia. So by the time he lands, we're already in this lather. The Prime Minister has involved himself. Djokovic at the Melbourne airport is told he has the wrong visa. He's not able to show why he got this exemption. And, this is a fluid story. So who knows? He's allegedly filed an appeal. The Prime Minister of Serbia is now involved. Who knows where this is going? But as of now, he has is in the process of being deported. And so unless something changes dramatically, he will not be playing and trying to win his 10th Australian Open. It's been quite a day.
Well, and no one really is going to come out of this situation looking particularly good. But does this scenario just add to Djokovic's already, shall we say, prickly reputation?
Yeah, it's just another instance of self-sabotage. And I've heard people say, well, tennis has always had bad boys and John McEnroe. That's not what this is. I mean, first of all, this guy was going for his 21st major. He is on the threshold of history. This would be like, Tiger Woods going to the British Open about to top Jack Nicklaus and the Prime Minister of England saying, go home. I mean, it's an extraordinary set of circumstances. And again, if the guy would have gotten vaccinated, that would have solved this problem. If he had said, you know what, I don't believe in vaccinations, I'm going to stay at home, that would have solved this problem. It's another instance, and there are many here, of this guy. I would say he plays tennis like a god, but sometimes he runs his career like a kid. And it's just another sort of evidence of self-sabotage. He's not a bad guy. This is not someone who relishes wearing the black hat. He's just very clumsy sometimes with the way he conducts his business. And this is just one of these situations where you say, you know what, it didn't have to come to this.
What does it do to the draw, do you think, John? Because we're looking now, no Roger Federer, and it's looking more and more like no Novak Djokovic in this tournament. So does it now open the door for Rafael Nadal to maybe become the first male tennis player to reach that elusive 21 Grand Slam titles?
How crazy would that be? I mean, Novak Djokovic is your 9-time Australian Open winner. He is almost to the Australian Open what Rafa Nadal is to the French Open. By his own doing, Novak Djokovic will not be here. Could you imagine if Rafa Nadal moves ahead and wins his 21st major? Nadal's only won the Australian Open once before, but I think this is a big opportunity for Nadal. And, the draw suddenly with one decision by, in an airport border room, the draw has all sorts of impact. I thought you were going to go with, suddenly there are a couple of Canadian players whose odds just got a lot better. But, Daniil Medvedev won the U.S. Open, the previous major. He's probably now your favorite. But, yeah, could Nadal win this? Absolutely. And this men's tournament, barring a successful appeal by Djokovic, I mean, the contours, the dimensions of this men's draw just changed immensely on the first Wednesday in January before the first ball was struck.
Well, it's been a wild story. And as you said, the tournament hasn't even begun yet. John Wertheim, thanks so much for this.
You got it.
Coming up on SportsCenter, after months of controversy, Kyrie